tying up another remnant fly today. If you don't know what the remnant flies are, I will refer you to the description down below. There's a link to the introductory video on what the remnant flies are. Loosely put, what they are is I have collected over the years through various tying classes and other things that I've done, all these little cutoffs, all these little snippets of hackle, of fur, chenille, all this other stuff. I call them my remnant stuff. Remnant. They're all in a box, so it's my remnant box. Anyway, for a long time, what I wanted to do was a series of flies where I just root through there and I just tie something up. So these are not flies I've ever tied before. Some are based on other flies that I have tied. As you can see today, this is a ant pattern, was what it started out as, and it's turned into kind of a Chernobyl ant / hopper type pattern. But I wanted something quick and easy for a terrestrial fly, and this is what I have today. So that's the latest remnant fly, a little hopper / ant pattern. I'll get started tying. So I'm going to start this remnant fly by placing my hook in the vise. This is a 9672 R74 kind of hook. I'm going to say a size 8, maybe 6, probably bigger than what I would normally do for like an ant pattern. But as I was looking through my stuff for this particular remnant fly, I actually ran across some foam. This little snippets of closed-celled foam that I have, and I got to thinking, it's still early in that time of year in terms of terrestrials, but that season will be upon us soon. So I got to thinking about ant patterns or hopper patterns, something like that, and decided I wanted to do something really just ultra simple, nothing complicated, kind of Chernobyl ant-ish, but just really simplified. So what I've done is I've trimmed some black and some orange closed-celled foam. These are about the gap of the hook right here, and maybe I'm going to say 2 eye lengths longer than the hook length on both of these, so maybe 1 1/4 of the overall hook length. And I'm going to tie those in, and then I'm going to use some Grizzly hackle for the legs on these. Remember, it's the foam that's more or less going to keep this thing afloat. I've got the orange on there so that it's going to be easier to see in lower light. And then there's the black. Now, I've already taken these, and what I did is I trimmed them longer than I wanted and a little bit wider. Took some Zap-A-Gap or CA glue and I glued them together. And then all I have to do is trim them to the width, even up. I've got that a little bit off, which I don't think would really matter, but just even up the ends of those a little bit, and I'm ready to tie that in. Like I said, the idea was to keep this super simple. For thread, I'm using a UTC 140 denier in black. I am going to start up by the eye of the hook, and I'm going to run a layer of thread all along the hook shank. And I'm going to end up just about past the point of the hook. The idea is similar to a Chernobyl ant. I'm going to center this on the hook. I'm going to tie that in there. I'm going to palmer a hackle there, then advance forward to maybe about a quarter to halfway up, a quarter of the shank back behind the eye, tie that in, and put a hackle there, and then bring it up, tie it off, and it's done. To help this out a little bit, I am going to put a little bit of super glue, CA glue, Zap-A-Gap, whatever you want to call it, right here where I'm tying that in. That's mostly just to help keep it anchored there. So I set this up right about where I want it. I'm going to take 2 wraps, holding that in place. I'm going to gently snug those wraps down. And then I'm going to put in 4 or 5 wraps, kind of snugging that down even more. I just want to keep that in place. Now, you can probably see I actually cut through the foam right there. And that's the difficulty with this, is you've got to be careful that you don't cut through that foam where some of the CA glue is going to help out. What I can do here is just pop a little bit of Zap-A-Gap in there. Put a little Zap-A-Gap in there. Push that together, and that will at least hold it together for a little while. That is one thing you do have to be careful with this closed-cell foam. If you aren't careful, you're going to cut through that foam. Now for the first hackle, I'm going to tie in this just regular Grizzly hackle here. And I think I've got these to where the barbs are about a little more than the gap of the hook. This is simply to represent some legs on this flying ant, not flying ant, but this very basic ant pattern. Taking my hackle pliers, I'll probably put 2 or 3 wraps in here. Just depends on how full that ends up looking, what I like. And 3 is about all I'm going to get. I'll secure that on the underside. And trim away the excess. Put one more wrap in there. I'm going to put some head cement right down here. I'm going to hold that together. Bring my foam up, and now I'm going to put nice touching turns in here up to about, like I said, the 1/4 point right about here. I'm going to put in some Zap-A-Gap right in here to just help hold that down. Then I'm going to put a couple wraps in here, slowly working my way, tighter wraps, so that I don't cut through that like I did before. Notice I didn't put a bit of Zap-A-Gap right under those thread wraps. That's because I had it all under here, and I think it'll hold it together. Now, this is just the first time I've ever done this fly. Like I said, that's how these Remnant flies work. So if I do fish this and it produces, I may find another way of doing this to get the same fly. I don't know. So we'll see. Up front, I have some dyed orange Grizzly hackle, and that's probably only going to be long enough for a couple. But I'm putting this on just to add a little bit of color. And again, I think the color is more for the fisherman than it is the fish. You'll be able to see it better. I'll try and get 3 wraps so it's like the back, but I may only get, may get none if I don't secure that in well. Now that Zap-A-Gap, by the way, that I used as a gel, it's going to give you a longer work time. If you don't want that, then use a regular thin CA glue Zap-A-Gap. Busted the tip off that. Try it 3 times. That's a charm. 2, and I think I can get a third. Just barely. Look at that. Now I'm bracing that, kind of pulling on that thread so that I'm squeezing that on in there real well. Getting that nice and secured. Some head cement down there. Now I'll bring my thread underneath, just right up behind the eye of the hook. And I'm just going to put in squeaky bobbin. 3 or 4 turns for a whip finish. Cut away my thread. A little bit of head cement on there, and that's to keep the thread from unraveling. Generally, if you have a good whip finish, it won't. And bring that down. Now, I just thought of this. I imagine if you wanted to, you could trim the corners a little bit to make this fly look a little bit more natural, not so Minecraft-ish. Something like that. A little bit better, maybe worse. Some foam on my shoulder. Okay, so that is the next Remnant fly, and this is going to be kind of a foam ant pattern. We'll just go with that. I don't know, we'll see. I mean, that baby's going to ride nice and high in the water. Kind of big. This would be a good warm water fly, but at the same time, Chernobyl ants are easily this big. So, and some are bigger. So when you get into the terrestrial season, not terrestrial, terrestrial season, this is not an unheard of size for trout. So there you go. There is the latest Remnant fly. A little bit of a ant pattern, and I hope you enjoyed that.
Thanks for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.